Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Dinkledork, a passionate developer and creator focused on the World of Warcraft universe. Over the past 6 months, I've embarked on an incredible journey, diving deep into the world of Azerothcore and crafting a custom repack that many of you have come to love. Today, I'm excited to take you behind the scenes, share the highs and lows, the challenges and triumphs, and giving you an insider's look for what it's like creating content for this iconic game. So yeah, this is going to be mostly an off-the-cuff video where I talk about my insights, what the journey has been like for the last 6 months, how I feel about things now, how I feel about things going forward, and yeah, I'm just looking forward to just kind of talking, because it's been a while since I've talked to you guys. Basically, this is my repack. There's a lot of cool features about this repack. There's custom races, right? I've got High Elves, as you can see, on the Alliance. I've got Lightforged Draenei. I have Pandaren, Worgen, Goblins, Volpera. The major focus of this repack is to just create some extra content for vanilla, TBC, and Wrath of the Lich King. And currently my focus is on old school vanilla content. One of the coolest features probably about this repack is the fact that you can fly around in Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor, and there are restored zones from Cataclysm. So basically this means that if you want to, you can actually visit Twilight Highlands here in the 3.3.5 client. This is all loaded onto a Wrath client. And this is due in large part to the amazing people at the Open Azeroth project who have gone ahead and implemented these new zones for us to enjoy on the Wrath client. Basically, this is what Azeroth would look like prior to all the broken zones in Cataclysm. So yeah, before Deathwing comes and destroys everything, this is what it is. And all the old zones have been kept intact. There's nothing that has been destroyed. There's only one minor exception, I guess you could say, which is in Blasted Lands, and I'll show you real quick. And this is over here by the area where Kha'Zix kind of just hangs out, right? So the Tainted Forest is the new area. You can still see the demons roaming around, all that fun stuff, but you also have some new grassy content as well, which I will be expanding into here soon. Gilneas is in this repack, but again, all the content that was there originally in Silverpine Forest has been preserved, so you don't have to worry about any of that stuff being removed. The repack is also an attempt to combine the 3 expansions into one through the story of Arthas. So much of the focus of the repack is going to be on the Scourge. There are Scourge events that happen in the major cities and in some of the smaller towns like Red Ridge and Crossroads, although I haven't really developed any of that recently. How do I feel about Scourge events? Actually, that's a really good segue. So originally when I released the repack, I had a couple Scourge events. They were received pretty well, I would say. Although people probably didn't play through the Red Ridge or Crossroad events as much as I had hoped. I haven't received a whole ton of feedback on those at all, to be honest. So it's kind of de-incentivized me from doing some more of those Scourge events, as they're very time consuming. They're also pretty resource heavy. I have to create Lua scripts first and then convert things to C++ to make them more efficient. That's just the nature of the game. And smart scripts, I guess you'd say. But yeah, those are just some things, and I'll go back to that. But I do want to also flesh out the Ashbringer quest line, for example. That's been pretty fun to think about and actually write about in my off time. I have some pretty good ideas about where I'm going to go with that and what I want to do. So thank you for continuing to provide good ideas for me in that regard. And yeah, just very appreciative of the feedback I get in general for stuff that you want to see. One of the things I also developed earlier on was this flight system where you basically find some wings, whether it's on a tabard or a spell that you find, and you can fly around. I haven't developed out that system because no one's really mentioned it. So if no one's mentioning it, that's typically a good indication that maybe I should just hold off on it for a while. So as much as I want to go ahead and start developing out the ranks for the flight system again, it's probably just going to wait for a while. I do have plans for the Ironforge airfield to make that a possibility, but we'll see when that time comes, essentially. Some of you might be wondering what is up with these random Defias attacking me. This is basically one of the challenge modes that I've implemented. So I've gone ahead and implemented a number of challenge modes. There's hardcore, there's Iron Man mode, there's also slow and steady, which is half experience, and you have to walk everywhere. There's diet mode where you can't eat or drink. All these challenge modes essentially just means that you get unique bonuses once you reach level 60. So you might actually gain some stat bonuses, you might get some new spells or whatever. So for example, slow and steady, your level 60 spell is Aspect of the Turtle, and you'll get that as a permanent spell. Another thing that I've gone ahead and implemented into the game is something I really liked from Warlords of Draenor, which was finding these like hidden treasures. So you can find these throughout Azeroth. They'll give you some experience the first time that you actually encounter them. The second time you encounter them, you won't get experience, but you'll still be able to get some gold. They also give some reward points, which you can spend on some cool stuff. But the reward points are also used for other things like this account-wide gear depository. For example, if you have a BOP item and you want to deposit it for another character on your account to use, you can do that for reward points. I now have Glyph and Vanilla and a chance that you can go ahead and buy, which kind of makes things a little bit easier. The resource trader has been something that was really cool. This thing has inflation baked in, as well as price fluctuations and things of that nature. It's kind of an auction house, essentially, is what it amounts to. There is an auction house bot, but I don't like it. So that's why I did the resource trader and some of those other things. So some other things I've developed is custom boss fights, particularly in Molten Core and Blackwing Lair. I haven't touched a whole lot in Anchorage. I did touch Cthulhu so that you can actually do him with NPC bots. I made his mechanics different a little bit. So instead of going into the stomach with tentacles, you fight these two avatars that spawn on either side of him. You kill those, and then he becomes vulnerable. You also have to remove these stacks of despair, essentially, from your character by standing in these beams of light. And yeah, just a new mechanic I've added. So gone ahead and changed a couple of the world bosses too to make them more doable with bots. So for example, on the Emerald Dream, the Dragons of Nightmare, instead of putting you to sleep, they just go ahead and reduce the healing you receive. This just makes it a lot easier to manage positioning with bots, etc. I've implemented a lot of new racials for old races, and pretty much flushed out all the racials for new races except for Pandaren, because Pandaren don't really fit in the game, and I'm probably going to replace them eventually. Keyword being eventually. So Repack also has quite a bit of transmog in it, basically all the way from Cataclysm to halfway through Shadowlands. Might be getting some more transmog here shortly, we'll see. Obviously some of the 3D elements from later tier sets are not implemented because it's a pain. I might do a guide on that sometime in the future if I actually end up doing a 3D transmog set, essentially. But you have to do it for every single race, and it's just a pain. It's just really a painful process. So it's not fun. But yeah, there's also a legendary system that's pretty unique. Maybe I'll show off one of the custom bosses. Yeah, so this is the new boss encounter, I guess you could say, which you can't summon unless the twin imps are dead. And he's kind of been a fun boss. But this is the most recent thing I've been working on. He puts out an unholy aura, and he'll summon tentacles. If you try to leave the room, you'll just die, essentially. These guys get summoned out every so often. You can see them. They'll try to knock you out of the ring. If you get knocked out of the ring, he'll start to spam Shadow Bolt Volley, which pretty much kills your raid pretty quickly. But if you kill these guys, next to the boss, he ends up taking increased damage, and that stacks. So now, once you get the boss to a certain health percentage, these guys will spawn. You want to go ahead and kill them as well. Obviously 2 waves spawned because I skipped a phase, but that's fine. If they reach the boss, they'll increase his health and they'll increase his size and damage by 1% for each one that reaches him. And there's a total of 50 of them that spawn at any given point. So yeah, kind of fun to deal with. At certain health percentages, he does start to gain new abilities, so that's kind of fun too. But yeah, just something I've been working on. He has his own unique loot. It's thematic loot. I try to make all my boss loot thematic. He comes out with new enchants that you can use. So you can enchant your relics, for example, or your wand or other things as well. He does also have some unique neck enchants. And I'll probably go over with people on a YouTube video sometime soon how to create your own custom enchants. Yeah, new gear, basically just trying to keep things thematic, but it's been a fun process. And honestly, creating new boss fights is pretty much the thing I enjoy most. The problem is most people are not going to see this content because they won't last that long. So that's just the sad fact of things, right? But anyway, yeah, so legendary system starts out where you get bracers in Molten Core, and then you can upgrade them in Blackwing Lair if you have the right reagents. Each class gets their own unique effect for legendary items, essentially. So some of them are more unique than others, some of them are just pretty basic. Really just depends on how creative I was at the time. Going forward, I will continue to make them upgradable as the expansions progress. I may even implement other types of legendaries that you can use. They will be unique equipped, so you can only have one type at the same time. That said, I do have other legendaries in the game, right? Talisman and Binding Shard. I went ahead and added a unique effect too, which is basically Prydaz's effect from Legion. I'm a big fan of Legion. So my favorite expansion is not vanilla. That is the focus of the repack currently is vanilla content, and I'll probably continue to focus on vanilla content for at least the next 6 months. Some of the things I want to get done are Emerald Dream, Grimbatol. I'm working on Stormwind Vaults and a custom dungeon map right now called Ursa's Lair. At this point in the server, I've also pretty much given something for every class, so I've either changed talents, how they either work, or the bonuses that they give. I've given new spells to certain classes, so Elemental Shaman is a lot better to play, for example, and a lot more competitive. Death Knights are closer to their earlier iteration when they first were made. Hunters have Barrage as a spell, for example. And some of the older racials have also been reworked for older races. But every race has at least one new racial. So in the future, I would like to add some more class-specific racials. At the moment, the only race that has class-specific racials are High Elves. And yeah. Probably at least do something for Lightforged Draenei for Paladins and Priests, but we'll see when we get there. I guess the one exception to 3D elements for gear are the 3D belts. I do have those as part of the repack. But again, those are implemented as spells and not as actual gear. Although the spells do appear on some pieces of equipment so that you can learn them and apply them later on. I guess another example for any unique feature for classes is the fact that High Elves and Blood Elves can dual wield if you're a Paladin. So Paladins have a new talent that makes dual wielding a bit viable, I guess you could say. I still need to do more testing on it. Crusader Strike will hit with both hands, as will Divine Storm. So that's a nice little addition I made. Plus there's some talents to help you out with offhand damage and whatnot. So some of the technical challenges that I've faced with working for Azerothcore. I gotta be honest, there hasn't been a whole lot. Sometimes there's things that I wish I could do more with the Luna, but it's not as efficient. So I ended up spending at least a month probably converting Lua scripts to C++. That was a pretty big technical challenge, I guess you could say. The whole goal there was just to make things more efficient, make the server run smoother. There were some issues with the server crashing periodically from the Scourge events, so I went ahead and converted a lot of the creature scripts over to Smart AI. and then I converted the rest of what I could into C++. So a lot of the challenge modes right now are also in C++, but you can also find them in Lua if you really wanted to copy a bit of what I've done. Azerothcore is definitely not nearly as developed as Trinity in some senses. I feel like Trinity is more complete overall. The definite benefit to Azerothcore is the modular aspect, though. So if you want to add something onto the core, you can actually do it in a module. And custom scripts definitely make it a lot easier than something that you would have to do in Trinity, where you actually have to modify the base core. There are things in the base core that I've modified. Certain spell scripts, for example, for classes, I've gone ahead and modified directly for the classes. Originally, when I started out modding, it was through CMangos, and CMangos has a really good database that you can do a ton with. Whereas I feel like you have to work more with C++ and Lua than you would have to in CMangos, for example, just because they have the foundational work pretty solidly in CMangos versus something like Azerothcore. SQL has been pretty fun to brush up on and learn more about. Definitely made my life easier in some aspects. For example, there's a lot of repacks out there that are using the individual progression mod, which restores old, lost vanilla content, my repack included, but they don't have the proper mana values, and so I used an SQL query to fix that. I also used a query to fix the original crafting requirements on a lot of the older profession items. SQL queries were also primarily used to update the spell visuals in the game. So Python is something I've been digging into more. Python is actually extremely useful for things that you normally can't do through regular queries. But yeah, I'd say the biggest learning moments actually came when I was implementing some of the legendary abilities. So, for example, trying to keep track of Death Knight health, or the effect that while you're above 80% health, you gain 6 strength every second, stacking up to 20 times. If you fall below 60% health, this effect is lost. That was a pain to try to figure out. Originally, I had it scripted in Lua, so that's just goes to show how amazing Lua can be, and how underutilized it is for certain developmental tools, I guess you could say. But yeah, those were fun. The thing how to do like the 20% of your health absorb shield, that was fun. Made that into a module initially, and then kind of nixed that. so it's just a script now. But yeah, that was a big learning moment. Anytime I actually had to convert Lua scripts to C++, those were also very big learning moments as well. I highly suggest that if you haven't, you attempt to do your best at converting Lua scripts into C++. You'll learn a lot in the process. So try it out. You know, if you break something, you break something. You'll just fix it again. So yeah. So the community has been actually really a fun aspect of the creation process. My personal recommendation, if you're wanting to create a private server just for you and your family, so initially when I was creating this private server, I was making it for my son, and I released it to the public because I wanted feedback and I wanted to get some ideas. I also wanted to make sure that my bugs were I had something looking at my bugs, so the bug reporting feature for Discord has been really useful for me, and I'm very grateful and always appreciative of people who report any bugs that they find. Because number one, it lets me know that people are actually playing the game. Sometimes you wonder, you're like, man, this bug went a really long time without being reported, and no one actually reported it. So yeah, I mean, if you're out there and you haven't reported any bugs, but you've come across something, please just open a ticket and let me know, because it's always very helpful. And yeah, so probably around April or May, the previous Repack Discord owner decided to leave and wanted to give up ownership of the Discord. So I went ahead and took that over. It was a really good opportunity to grow. I wish we had more Repack creators for the actual Discord still, but it's been good. We have 3 solid repacks that people play on a regular basis. 4, I guess, if you count Kyle's, but Kyle's is pretty dated now by comparison, and I don't think really many people are playing his. If people really want to play a race repack, they can play his, but his races are not very well developed. Like, they don't have racials for one, mine do. And I've got a lot of custom skins thanks to Falmarillion. And yeah, so it's been nice too because I've been able to actually grow as a team. So right now, the 3 major people on the scene are me, Falmarillion, and Thanatos. And Falmarillion has been instrumental in making sure that the launcher works. He's been really great at creating new skins and making things look good. In fact, you know, he just makes me look good in general. So the logo design for the repack was all him. And yeah, all the tattoo work, all that fun stuff, that's Falmarillion. Thanatos has been really helpful too in the sense that he's been helping me flesh out the Gilnean starting zone and other things of that nature. He's done a lot of DBC work in the past, a lot of DB edits, and then I go back behind him and fix things. So it's good to have someone start the work and then have me go back and just come in behind and change things as needed. That's extremely helpful. Our other people who have been really helpful is Game Master. Game Master has done a ton of retroporting for me because it's just something that takes a lot of time. So raiding with leashes is part of the repack, so you can go and get those pets from the relevant raids, at least the first tier, right? Mr. Bigglesworth is not part of an achievement, he's just part of killing Kel'Thuzad at this point. But yeah. He helped also import all the custom mounts for High Elves, so let me go show you guys that real quick. So these are the custom mounts that you get if you're a High Elf or Void Elf. You can actually come over here and get these if you're a Horde as well for the time being. You just have to make it into Stormwind City. So there's even a PvP mount at this point for the Midnight Courser. So let's see. Russian Ranger has been super helpful as well. He's always in Discord answering questions from the community, particularly when I'm not feeling good or there's just something I really don't know the answer to. There's a lot of simple crap that I really just don't know the answer to, frankly. So, yeah, if you're watching this, I'm very grateful for your help and just wanted to say thank you. All the people who have been helping to support the repack via Patreon, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So thank you for your contributions, because your contributions means that we continue to get really cool stuff for the repack. Ideally, I'd like to grow the Patreon count by 5 times the amount of what it's making right now. That would ensure that we can actually get some really, really cool stuff. I would love to update the Worgen models, for example. But as it stands, if I'm being truly, completely transparent, the only thing Patreon is covering at the moment, and I say only, I'm not saying that in a bad way, I'm just saying that it pretty much only covers the public server at this point. So we have a public server, it's really small, but it's paying for the upkeep of that, essentially, at this point. And any other cool stuff that I have to pay for just comes out of pocket. Yeah. Else, man. So much stuff to talk about. Major learning moments. Freaking Implementing races were a huge learning moment as well. Those were a painful process, and so I screwed up so many models and creature IDs and stuff like that. Initially, there was a lot of growing pains initially, and I'm glad that we're past the point of screwed up creature models, because that was just painful. And yeah. It's actually been fun branching out and doing more C++ for other projects. So one of the things I did recently for the individual progression module was fix the Onyxia fight so that whelps are not spawning out of her butt. They're actually spawning out the mouths of the caves. And I also fixed the Gluth fight in Naxxramas so that zombie chows are actually being eaten like they're supposed to. And Decimate is working as intended. So that remained broken for quite some time. I think the KT fight still needs to be fixed. I'll probably take a look at that at some point. Not sure when. Future plans going forward. Well, right now we're still very much in the vanilla stages of the game. What's in the works? Right now Gilneas is in the works. There's going to be some more lore surrounding High Elves and Void Elves. I would like to start something on the Ashbringer questline. And for the Ashbringer questline, I'm going to be doing content for everyone. So even if you don't get the Ashbringer, there's still going to be a storyline and lore there for you, and maybe some rewards as well. But yeah, there's going to be extra rewards, obviously, if you have the Corrupted Ashbringer. I always felt that the Corrupted Ashbringer should have just been something that lasted you throughout all expansions. Obviously, there's some lore issues with that I'll be addressing, because otherwise you have two Ashbringers in the lore, and you're not supposed to have that. And honestly, that's something that broke Legion, I guess you could say, is that there were so many damn Ashbringers in the world. So, yeah, it's just interesting to think about. And yeah, I'd like to get Emerald Dream done and Grim Patrol. So Emerald Dream has pretty much had all of its map work done. There's not much there to do. I guess if you really wanted to, you could add ground effects to things, but I'm not really that concerned about it. So I'm looking forward to some of the encounters that I'm going to be putting in here. Main green zone is going to just be a daily quest hub zone. And then these offshoots on the sides where there's corruption, those will be their own instances. And I think this offshoot right here will also be its own raid. So you'll have your raid boss here, you'll come in, maybe you'll have a patrolling raid boss in the back, you'll have some patrols here, you'll have another raid boss here, right? I would like to have one raid boss just coming all the way down, patrolling, kind of like in Firelands, right? Where it patrols through the whole zone, and if you're not paying attention, then you get screwed. And then obviously the final boss will be right here. So that'll be good. I need to add some ambience and music and all that fun stuff. Obviously the area designations are not correct, but that's easy to fix. And yeah, should be fairly straightforward. Also, there basically the storyline between the storyline I have going on for the Emerald Dream is that the Scourge, Arthas, is trying to find entry points into Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor so that he can deploy his army more easily and quickly. And so he found an old artifact, which is the Eye of Yasharaj, and has decided to start moving in on the Emerald Dream and corrupting it. And so this is where we're at. Eventually this will culminate into a boss fight at the top of the ziggurat. So you come in here, right? You kill a couple things, and then eventually you can move to the center teleporter thing here, right here, right? And then you'll go all the way to the top. You fight at the very top. So, should be fun. Yeah, Game Master pretty much did all this aspect of the Emerald Dream for us, so that was good. Then, see, Mr. Taco-tastic did quite a bit of work here too with the Nightmare Zones, so that was good. I still need to do some mini-map work. But yeah, after that, we're basically gonna progress into Grimbatol. I think Grimbatol is going to be our capstone raid for vanilla. It's just the raid, right? So this is gonna be a 10-man raid, I think. Maybe 25 man. I'll probably keep it 25 man just to keep some consistency. And then, you know, this is obviously the dungeon version of the raid back in Cataclysm. And I do have the raid version, but I just felt like this one was more appropriate. And I think that this will work out better in the long run as a raid. So it'll be a quick raid, nothing, pretty short and sweet, nothing too crazy. And it'll also tie into the fact that we can also go to Blackwing Descent. So one of my big plans for TBC is to have an alternate leveling route. We have a ton of new zones, right? We have the Twilight Highlands that we can go visit. We have Oldham. We have Tolbarad that we can visit. And we have... I think off the top of my head. There's Vashir. I don't think I'll use Vashir for anything, to be honest. I'm sorry. I hate water zones. I hated it. I hated that zone in Cataclysm. Most people hated that zone. I know, Vincent, if you're around, you loved that zone, but you're like one of the few. So, Volpera will also get their own starting zone here shortly. We're actually working on the map work for that currently. Game Master is, and I'm excited for that one. Hyjal is another area, right? I'm actually excited for some of the work that Morpheum and Mew have done in the project. So those are other people who are actually on the team, but not really on the team. If it wasn't for the Open Azeroth project, I wouldn't have all these cool new zones to play with. And I'm very grateful for them and their work. And yeah. So Hyjal will be fun to work with. I don't know if I'll ever get the maps working for them, but we'll see. Maybe if I can speak to Morpheum, that would be nice to get them from her, I think. It's hard to tell by people's avatars sometimes. Yeah, there's a lot of content that is still yet to be made. And that most people didn't like the leveling content for TBC or just the content in TBC in general. And so giving them an alternate leveling route would be actually pretty awesome. I actually have a soft spot for TBC these days, and I don't know. There's just, as I get older, I have this secret love for TBC just grows and grows. So I am very much looking forward to moving on from vanilla and into TBC. So right now you can actually come visit Hyjal if you wanted to. As for the Wrath of Lich King, I'm not sure what I'm going to do there, to be honest. I might... but in terms of actual recent future plans, the biggest thing that is being worked on at the moment is Gilneas. I'd like to release Ursa's Lair, hopefully next patch. I would also like to release Stormwind Vaults next patch, but we'll see. We'll see. There's always so much that you want to do, and you're not sure if you're ever going to get there. There's always a question of what would you do differently if you had to go back in time and change anything. And I would say probably focus on starter zones more. And up that way. I think that vanilla starting zones are good as a whole, but they could definitely be added on to. So I don't really want to remove anything from vanilla starting zones. I would just like to add on to them. There's definitely room for improvement in places like Ashen Vale, Barrens. Stone Talon, for example, has almost no content. There's so much potential there as well if you wanted to create more content, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. But yeah, I mean, it's always like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of process. So every time you implement something, you'll probably break something. One thing with the I don't know if I mentioned this previously, but every time I messed with the races, if you add like a skill, you break another skill. So it's like there's always something that you break whenever you implement something new. I would also like to create more of some more strife between the Horde and Alliance. I always felt that the war between the Horde and Alliance was very downplayed, and there wasn't much going on there. It would be nice to create some like occasional points of tension, maybe along roadsides or crossroads or whatever, between the Horde and Alliance. That would be good. I look at some of like what Stone Harry did back in the day, and I thought that was pretty interesting. So doing some of what he did would be pretty cool. I do have a new map that I want to use as well. It's a Scourge map, essentially, where you have the Alliance and the Horde forces attacking and trying to fend things off and whatnot. That could be fun in the future as well. But yeah, I mean, overall, that's kind of the general direction where I'm going. Wrath of the Lich King is so far away that I don't even want to think about it currently. There are boss fights I would like to modify potentially. Like I would like to do a lot of changes in next 10 and next 25, but it just really comes down to what do I have time for. One of the approaches I've taken recently is like, what do I really want to work on? So if there's something I don't want to work on, then it's probably not a good idea for me to work on, otherwise the end result will not be very good. I really have a fun time with modifying boss fights, creating boss fights, things of that nature. Even working on Karazhan for level 60 was actually a pretty fun ordeal. I would say that it was less fun in some senses because they just didn't have, like, I didn't really change any of the fights here, but adding the gear was pretty fun. Coming up with gear is always challenging. Coming up with a system to de-level and depower, I guess you could say, NPCs is always a thing. I did restore the Tenris Merkblood boss encounter as well. There's actually a secret drop on him. Let's see if I can find his room real quick. Honestly, guys, I could talk hours and hours of some of the stuff that I've done on this repack, and most of you would be bored. Just with me talking. Freaking, there it is. Okay. So yeah, you open this room, and boom, Tenris Merkblood. So he does his, basically none of his abilities were scripted out. I didn't remove his Lua script. Now I'm kind of concerned. No, okay, we're good. Yeah, so those are still around. Obviously, they're going to hurt more if you're level 60. I don't have any level 60 loot for this fight. So, yeah, you got their Arcanite Ripper, and there's another piece of loot that didn't show up. That's, yeah, it's a secret, so to speak. What would I like to see more of going forward? So, if I'm being completely honest, I would like to see more actual new content. So there's different types of content. There's content that builds on top of existing content, like level 60 Kara, right? Time walking. It's not really new content, but it's kind of new content. Challenge modes are another form of kind of new content where it's just making older content more interesting. But when I mean new content, I'm talking about new zones, new quests, new bosses, new raids. I would like to do more new dungeons and bosses. That's the stuff that I find particularly interesting myself. Advice for aspiring developers: if you're starting your own repack, probably don't put it out there to the community. I know that's that's probably like double-edged advice, I guess you could say. So at the same time, I want more repacks on the Repack Discord. I think it's also good to get feedback on your content, right? But if all you want to do is enjoy your repack and your own content yourself, then it's a lot easier if you're just doing it for yourself rather than having to manage other people. At least, community. It definitely takes up time interacting with the community, and I'm not saying I hate it or anything, but if that was a point of advice for aspiring repack developers who just want to enjoy their own content, just do it yourself. Also find some work-life balance, because I suck at taking breaks from this. Which reminds me, as far as going forward, I'm probably going to be slowing down. I have another kid coming in March. I am getting busier with work stuff. I have a new YouTube project for work, essentially, that I'm going to be working on. I work in the advertising industry primarily for real estate, so that's kind of what I've been focusing on. I was sick recently with COVID, and it's given me an opportunity to think about things and made me realize that I do want to take a little bit of a break. And so I'm still going to be pushing out new content. It's just going to be not as frequently. Yeah. One of the things about me is when I have a hobby, I just go at it full throttle. That's how I was with Japanese. I'd studied Japanese for 12 hours a day. And that's kind of how I went with coding for a while there too. So coding, I'm probably going to be doing a little bit less of. I do think that it's important to actually find a balance. Do the things that you love so that you can continue doing the other things that you love, right? Because otherwise you just get burnt out. And burnout is a real thing. So that pretty much wraps up our journey over the last 6 months. It's been an exhilarating experience filled with lots of challenges, growth, and countless hours of coding and creativity. Sometimes it's really hard to create new content, but a lot of you guys give me some awesome ideas, and I hope you continue to give me that feedback. I genuinely hope that this gives you a deeper appreciation of what goes into creating a custom repack, especially in the vast universe of World of Warcraft. And I just wanted to give a massive shout out to the entire community and people in particular who have been supporting me on Patreon. Your feedback, support, and enthusiasm have been really the driving force behind the whole project. Whether you've been with me from the beginning or just stumbled upon this channel today, thank you for being a part of this adventure. As we look to the future, I'm excited about the new content and experiences we'll be bringing to the table. But for now, I'd love to hear from you. What was your favorite part of these last 6 months? Any suggestions or features you're eager to see? Drop your thoughts in the comment below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more behind the scenes. Until next time, keep adventuring, and I'll see you guys on the other side of Azeroth.